All right. We're welcome everyone to this week's Coffee and Kabbalah Parshas Vayera. I am so excited to be in the gorgeous community garden in Efrat. Look at this, 2 minutes away walk. We have this stunning garden established by my friend Karen and the whole community and her husband Jack. Welcome everyone. We'll dedicate today's shiur to the safe return of all the chatufim, whole in body, goof, and nefesh, to all of our chayalim. Hashem should protect them and bring them home right away, and we should end this darkness and have Mashiach. Also to Karen's grandmother's yard site was yesterday. Kleina, her neshama should have an aliyah. Kleina bat Sarah. Welcome everyone. I'm so honored that you're here. So a very quick recap in Parsha. We're in my favorite, and I love Bereshit. We're living with our avot. We're in Parshas Vayera. So we have Bereshit, Noach, Lech Lecha, Vayera. We're in the 4th chapter. A quick recap of Vayera. So last week we discussed Avram's life from when he was 75 until 99 years old. We really only have from his birth in the end of Noach, and then we have his life from 75, where Hashem tells him to leave his birthplace and go to Eretz Yisrael, and he goes down to Egypt. He comes back up. Him and Lot separate. He fights the war with 5 kings. A lot happens. And now in this week's Parsha, Avram is 100 years old or 99 years old, and we begin with the revelation of Hashem, Vayera. Vayera Hashem al Avram. Why is Hashem appearing to Avram? It's the 3rd day after Avram took on a bris milah, after Hashem promised him he'll be a great nation, and Avram is very sick, and he's visited by God. He's talking to God, and suddenly he sees 3 men. They were essentially angels. Avram doesn't know yet. He wants guests. Hashem prevents all the guests from coming by making it very hot because Avram is too sick to take care of guests. But Avram is distraught. And he says, excuse me, God, it's been great talking to you, but the guests come first. So he says goodbye, and he goes and tends to his guests, the 3 angels. We have the story. Why did the 3 angels come? The 3 angels were Malach Michael, Malach Gavriel, and Malach Raphael. They each came for a separate mission. Raphael first came to heal Avram. He's the Malach of Refuah. Michael came to give the blessing of the good news that they would have a child in 1 year. And Gavura, came to destroy Sodom. And so, let me just go back to the recap. A year later, they have a child, Yitzchak. Before this, they have Yishmael in last week's Parsha, who's now at this time of Yitzchak's birth, 13 years old. And the Gavriel gives the news that Hashem is going to destroy Sodom because he heard the cries of the tortured girl and all the wickedness that happened there. And even though Hashem said he wouldn't destroy the whole world, he would still destroy the city. And Avraham approaches Hashem, Vayigash. We're going to come back to this in a moment, and begs or fights with Hashem to save Sodom on account of all the tzaddikim. It turns out there's no one good there except his nephew Lot, and Hashem saves them as long as they don't turn around. Lot's wife does turn around, and she becomes a pillar of salt. She looks back, right? They're supposed to look towards the future and not look back. While they're in Lot's, then there's the horrible story of Lot's 2 daughters believing that they're the only ones left in the world. They get their father drunk and lie with him and become pregnant. And the 2 sons born from this incident are the fathers of the nations of Moab and Ammon. Then Avram moves to Gerar, where the Plishti king Avimelech, right? Again, history echoes, takes Sarah, who is still beautiful. She's 100. You're right. Last time we were like, she's gorgeous. She had to be hidden. She was 65. She's still gorgeous. She's 100 years old, right? Age is time. Beauty is timeless. Who he thinks is Avram's sister. He takes her to his palace, and in a dream, Avram warns him that he will die unless he returns this woman to her husband. So he returns her. Then Hashem finally remembers. This is all prior to Yitzchak being born. Hashem remembers his promise to Sarah. Sarah prayed for Avimelech to have a child, and she was answered, and she was given a son who was named Yitzchak. He is circumcised at 8 days old. Avram is 100 years old, and Sarah is 90 at the birth. So she was 90. Sorry, at their child's birth. Now is when Yitzchak begins to grow up, and Yishmael is a terrible influence on him. Yishmael is a hunter, he is a rapist, he's a stealer, and he's having a very bad influence on Yitzchak. And so Sarah makes the decision that he needs to be sent away, and Avram has a very hard time with this, but Hashem says that Sarah has a nevuah, and he has to listen to her and send him away. And when they're wandering in the desert, they're dying of thirst, and Hashem hears the cries of Yishmael and saves his life by showing them a well. Then Avimelech, and there's a lot going on in this week's Parsha. Welcome, Jorah. Avimelech makes a treaty with Avraham at Be'er Sheva, and Avram gives him 7 sheep as for the peace treaty. And then finally, the climax of this week's Parsha may be of one of the most important stories in the entire Torah, the Akedah, where Hashem, now the final test in Avram's life, right? And Hashem tells him to sacrifice Kach as Bincha, as Yechidcha, your only son, the one that you love, Yitzchak, and bring him as a sacrifice. And of course, we know that as Yitzchak is bound and Avram lifts the knife, a voice comes from heaven to stop him, and instead he offers a ram in his place. And now, at the end of the Parsha, Avram hears the news that his nephew Besuel has a daughter, Rivka, who will eventually marry Yitzchak. That is the Parsha. Now, there is so much in this week's Parsha. It's going to be hard. I still haven't chosen which one we're going to talk about, but we will start. I know what we'll start with. We'll start with the name of the parsha. The name of the parsha reflects a lot on the essence of the parsha, and the name Vayera means, and he appeared and he revealed himself to him. And my husband was talking. We were talking about this, how we have revelation of Hashem all over us. We see Hashem in so many parts of life. We see Hashem in nature and beauty in so many indirect ways, in the birth, in so many miracles around us. And look, just looking around, you can't not see Hashem in the world. But especially in darkest times in our life, in challenging times in our life, in a world right like today, we want not just to see Hashem in indirect ways through his creations, but we want to see and have Hashem reveal to us in a more direct way. We want guidance. We want to see Hashem practically in a real intimate way. I saw a video today of a man who used to travel with the Rolling Stones, and he was in New York, and he met the Rebbe on the street, and he said, "Anshuldik" in Yiddish, "Vistu di Lubavitch Rebbe, are you the Lubavitch Rebbe?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, I need to ask you something. And the Rebbe said, "Freg, ask." And he said, "Where is God? Where is God?" And he said, "Arumim, everywhere." And he says, "Ich weiß, I know, aber where is God? But I know, but where is God?" And he said, "He's in everything. He's in the tree. He's in the chair you're sitting in. He's in every single creation." And again, he said, with tears in his eyes, he said first the Rebbe's eyes just locked with his, and he was crying when he repeated this in the video. And he says, a third time, he said, so the Rebbe said, God is everywhere. He's in every creation. He's in everything you see. And he says, "Ich weiß, aber wer is he?" But I know, but where is he? And he said, if you're asking like this, he says, he's in your heart, in dein Hart, if you're asking like this. If you really want to know, you don't want to know. And it reflected this idea that sometimes we don't want to just see God in indirect ways, see Hashem around the world and everywhere. We want to see him in here. We want to feel Hashem in our lives, in our heart, in our immediate lives. I don't want to just go outside and see Hashem in beauty. I want in my heart to know that Hashem is with me and to feel Hashem in my life. And that's really the message of Vayera. Where do we see Hashem in our lives, right? Where do we have that revelation? When do we get to see that revelation? What's amazing about this week's Parsha is that this is a Parsha all about tests. And the message that my husband was sharing, we were discussing, was that in the tests, in the challenges of life, in our darkest moments of our life, that's where we have the revelation. That's where the Vayera Shemo Avram was. All the times of revelation are in his deepest dark challenges in his life. Vayera Hashem, when is Hashem appearing to Avram? 3 days after he gave himself a bris milah at 99 years old, and all the males of his household. There's another story of the third Chabad Rebbe, when he was a child, when he read the story about Hashem talking to Abraham, he cried to his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe. He said, "I want Hashem. Why? It's not fair. Why did Hashem appear to Abraham and not to me? I want Hashem to appear to me." That's all our question. We all just have revelation. We're sick of the darkness and the chaos and the confusion in our personal lives and in the world around us. And his grandfather answered him. He said, when a Jew has a bris milah at 99 years old, then he merits Hashem to talk to him and appear to him. And really, that deeper message is that when was the revelation, or really what is the revelation? The revelations come to us, and we have the deepest connections and moments with Hashem, and we find Hashem in the moments of our darkest challenges in our life, at that moment where we surrender, where we say Hineni. And this goes back to what we mentioned earlier. In this week's Parsha, we have this, this is something, I heard this beautiful talk by Jonathan Sachs, who was giving a commentary on Leonard Cohen's final song called You Want It Darker, where in this song, Leonard is singing Kaddish essentially to himself 2 weeks before he knew he was going to pass away soon, and he released the song 17 days before his passing. And he has 3 chorus times in the chorus. He sings Hineni, Hineni, behold. So what is Hineni? Hineni says, here I am. And then he says, so Leonard Cohen says, Hineni, Hineni, I am ready, my Lord. That's surrender, that I'm ready. He knew what's coming. He's surrendering to whatever, to Hashem, to Hashem's oneness, to giving it over to Hashem. And Jonathan Sachs' beautiful talk on this, and I'll link it, it was so deep. He said that Leonard was saying a commentary of the Medrash, that there's 3 times in this week's Parsha where we have, in the Kedah, in the deepest challenge, or the darkest challenge, and we take it for granted. We learn about the Kedah, he has to sacrifice the son, and he didn't. It is such a dark reflection of Judaism, and we'll talk about that soon, a depiction. Where Judaism is, one of the worst sins in Judaism is child sacrifice, which was commonly done in the pagan practices, and Judaism denounces it. Hashem says there is nothing, no place in this in Judaism. But here, the first Jew, Avraham, the first father, is being called to sacrifice his son. It's against everything we stand for, and it's a very dark place. And we'll speak more about what the deeper messages in that are, or the real meaning, or the undercoding of what that really meant. Because obviously Hashem didn't really want him to sacrifice his son, but we'll learn where that even came to play, why that even was mentioned. But in this great test of Avram's life, the biggest test of Avram's life, the 10th test that Hashem said, kachna, please do this test, because if you don't pass this one, then all the other ones are worthless. And in this moment, there's 3 times where the word Hineni comes in. And I never looked at Hineni as surrender until I really connected it to this idea of revelation and surrendering through our challenges, but and hearing Leonard's song. So the Medrash says that there's 3 times where we say Hineni. First, and I brought this in the sources, where Hashem says, that one actually, the first in Parak, the Akeda is in Bereshis, Parak Chaf Beis, Parsuk Aleph. Vayihi achar dvar me'ela was after these, a little bit later, Velohim nisas Avram, and Hashem tested. That's the word, the tests. Avram, Vayomer elav, and he said to him, Avraham, Vayomer Hineni. He said, Avram, and he answered, here I am. I surrender. Here I am. What do you want from me? I'm yours, right? And that's Leonard saying, here I am. The second time we see Hineni, if you go back, that was the last source. Is the source number 4, Bereshis Chapes, 6 psukim later. They're walking together. Avram and Yitzchak are walking towards the Akedah. And Vayomer Yitzchak al Avraham Aviv. And Yitzchak says to his father, Vayomer Avi. He says, my father, where are you? Vayomer Hineni b'ni. And he says, here, I am here, my son. I'm with you. And then the third time, in 4 psukim later, Chaf Beis Yud Aleph, Vayikra elav malach Hashem min hashamayim. This is when Avram is about to slaughter his son, and an angel calls to him from the heavens, Vayomer Avraham, Avraham, and he says, Avram, Vayomer Hineni, and all 3 times he says, here I am. And that is really the answer in this, to our tests. What do we do when we're faced with the darkest times in our life, with these crazy challenges? We're like, how can I deal with this struggle or this challenge or darkness personally or as a nation, or what we're facing right now? It's just indescribable. We can't even go there sometimes because it's just so dark. And how do we even go there? What we need to do, and the answer of Hineni, to me at least, is surrender. It's here I am. I'm ready, my Lord. It's surrendering. And it's that moment where we shift from trying to make our struggles and darknesses go away. Because in the beginning, when we have challenges, we're just trying to fight the darkness. And fighting darkness is futile. Because the more darkness, there's so much darkness in this world of Galus. In Galus, it's futile because there's just endless darkness. There's more and more, wherever it came from. But the answer to darkness is adding light. Is instead of battling and pushing away darkness, if we light a candle, the darkness goes away. And in this case, when we're faced with this struggle, and I know I've said this before, but in the initial reaction, at least on me, is like, how do I make this go away? If I'm going through a struggle with a relationship, with my children, with pain, with health, whatever it is in my life or in the world, I'm like, how do I stop this? How do I end this? Solutions. Mm-hmm. And then eventually we want to shift to the higher calling, which is going back to, actually I was going to share this later, but I'll share it now. The Ramban says about all tests from Hashem, every test from Hashem to every one of us, is for whose sake? Is it to prove to Hashem something? No, because Hashem knows that. And he says every test is for the sake, not of the world around them, because at Avraham's Akedah, there was no one there. Not even the 2 servants stayed behind. It's not for the rest of the world to see, and it's not for Hashem. The only reason to give a test is for the sake of the one being tested, to bring out within them greater strength, greater quality, and gifts and deep messages and revelation. It's for the sake of revelation for the person receiving the test. And in our lives, he says, when we test a child, why do we test a child? To fail them? We test children, we make a test to bring out their latent wisdom, to strengthen their wisdom, to strengthen their memory retention. Or when we test our child, when we ask our child a question, it's to show their greatness or show them how much they know, to see, wow, you're so smart. It's to show and bring out something dormant within them to the forefront. That's how we test our children. When Hashem tests us, it's to bring out something latent in us, to reveal it. So we have so much latent potential. We all know, Lech Lecha, go to your highest potential. We all know how much of our potential we're not actualizing. And Hashem, how does he draw out that potential? When he tests us, when he puts us in a narrow strait, when we're put in a Mitzrayim, in a constricted place in our life, anani bemerchavka, Hashem reveals us. There's merchav, there's revelation, there's expansion. When we squeeze an olive, that's when the oil comes out. Only when something is squeezed in this world can the true oil and revelation come out. So when Hashem puts us in a test, in a nisayon, the Ramban says it's for our benefit. It's to draw out within us something that was dormant. In the case of the Akedah, there were so many answers about what he had to draw out. But one of the answers I usually mention is the Hasidic one that to bring out within Avraham that he wasn't just acting with chesed always, everything else he did was with chesed, but to bring out that his gvura, his ability to be able to have gvura. But there was so much more. Hopefully we'll get to it. So much more that would have to come out from Avraham for himself. It wasn't for the sake, because one of the questions asked is, what was the point of the Akedah? And going back to that Ramban, he says that's why, because the test is for the benefit of the one being tested and not for anyone else, to draw out and reveal within them something dormant. That is why Hashem only tests the tzaddikim, only tests those who are worthy. Only those he knows will be able to pass the test, who have what it is to pass the test, to draw out, not just to pass it. To pass it means to draw out within them tremendous potential that can only be drawn out when they're squeezed. And Hashem therefore doesn't test their Rishayim because he doesn't want to punish them for no reason. We don't start testing our kids or asking questions that they would know the answer to. Why would we embarrass them? We don't give a test to a child if we know, any good teacher knows that we don't give a test to a child if we know they're going to fail. We modify it for them. We want them to succeed. And Hashem, the ultimate loving Father, only gives us a test to tzaddikim so that we can bring out our potential. And this goes back to the Akedah, which reflects in the question is, what was the point of the Rambam of the Akedah? If Hashem knew Avram would pass, because Hashem knows, it only gives Hashem only gives a test to someone who could pass it, and no one else saw it. It wasn't for Kiddush Hashem. So who was it for? And of course, the answer is that it was for Avraham. And now we go back to what do we do? So now that we know that when we're tested, it's only for our benefit, we can now shift. And what for me, one of the biggest life-changing switches I had was stop whenever I'm faced with a struggle in my life. Instead of asking, how do I make this go away? How do I make this stop? I change it to, what dormant potential do I need to, what's the gift? What is the message Hashem is sending me? What are the gifts Hashem is sending me through this test? And what dormant potential that needs to come out through this test? What is Hashem trying to squeeze out of me through this test? So there's a higher calling. Hashem is doing this for my benefit. What is the benefit for me through this test? And when you shift that, suddenly you're not trying to fight it. You're not fighting the darkness, but rather you're surrendering. You're saying, wow, Hashem sent me this. This is from Hashem for my benefit, for my good. I have to find how in this test there's going to be some thing that's going to be revealed, a revelation that's going to come out, and it's life-changing, and it's not automatic, right? It's for the beginning, I'm fighting it, and I'm like, make this go away. How do I make this stop? Strategizing, arguing, and fighting why, and then eventually I'm like, wait, this is coming to me for a reason. And what's amazing is that almost always in my life, when I've shifted from making it stop to what is the potential here? What do I need to learn from this? The test ceases to, the suffering right away goes away, and usually the test resolves itself in miraculous ways, because when the test, once I take what I need to, the test is no longer needed. The narrowness, the pinch, the squeezing is only to get out the oil. When you have the oil, when you've received the messages, then the nisayon is no longer needed, and it's gone because you've taken what you need to take from it. It's like someone's trying to give you something. If you're not taking it, it's just going to keep being there. And so as long as we're fighting it, it's just like, no, but you need to take this gift. And when we receive what we need to receive from it, then it can go away. And I love that, going back to that depiction of Hineni and Vayera, that their true revelation, when we can actually see Hashem in our lives the most, as hard as it is to say, is when we're in a struggle in our lives, when we're in a dark place, and we reach that moment of Hineni, and we surrender. And rather than fighting the darkness, we say, Hashem, I surrender to you, and I turn to you, and I surrender to whatever it is that you want to come through me, whatever you're sending to me. When I could surrender in that moment, that's the revelation of Vayera. That's when we meet Hashem, and that's when we have that true revelation of Hashem in thine hearts, in your heart, when you surrender to having Hashem in your heart, right? Like the Kutzker said, that where is Hashem? Wherever you let him in. When we crack ourselves open, when we surrender, when we open ourselves up, that's when we have Hashem in my heart, in my life, and not just Hashem in the indirect ways where I could see him, but I want to feel him. I want him to be with me. I want to know Hashem is with me. And that happens when I surrender. And I hope my friend doesn't mind me sharing. I was speaking to a friend about mikvah. I'm obviously not going to say names, but I think she said it's okay. And we were speaking about mikvah, and mikvah is that act of surrender. Because for me, at least, for anyone who's controlling, especially, I need to control everything that's happening in my life, and everything has to be perfect, and I have a very high standard. Mikvah, the words of Tevilah is bitul. So as women, we connect to this idea. The words of this, the whole entire purpose of mikvah is to surrender, to let go, and to completely release form and surrender to Hashem, because every transformation, Chassidut says, to reach from one state to a new state, requires a total surrender or bittul before a nothingness, a state of nothingness in between two stages. And the example brought in Chassidut is the seed. For a seed planted to turn into a plant or a flower or a tree, it needs to first disintegrate and become nothing, and only then can it reach that state of transformation. So in our lives, we're in the mikveh as well, where a mikveh is a transformative portal. For me, the mikveh, one of my favorite ideas in my mikveh, I can link the mikveh talk, but it's a portal. A mikveh is always a portal between two stages of existence, from a Jew to convert to become a non-Jew. It's that transformative moment where it's that portal from one state to a new state, for a single woman to become a married woman, for a life as a child is born, the mother goes to the mikveh, and as a body leaves the world, it goes through the mikveh as well. Body after it passes away is taken through Tara. So the mikveh is that portal through all the biggest transformations of life, from Nida to Tara, from Nida to Tahora, from Tuma from Tamea to Torah. And what it's saying is that to have any huge transformation in your life, there needs to be first a state of nothingness before you can go to that new state, or the transformative, the new place you want to be in. And that again is what mikveh is meant to be. It's that moment of surrender, and that's really the water. Being in the water is letting go and dipping, and that dipping tefillah is dipping yourself and surrendering to Hashem, to just letting go of holding on to all of our problems and all of the weight that we carry. And we feel like I wake up every day with like lists of struggle, of just to-do lists and things I need to take care of, and my weight and other people's struggles that they're going through, and feeling like, how am I going to help everyone who needs help? There's just so much darkness. How am I going to do it? And the mikvah is that moment, or in our lives, that Hineni moment of surrendering, of just saying, like, it's not mine to carry, right? I'm just a vessel, and it's for Hashem it's Hashem's load. I'm just here to do what I can in the moment to get the messages I need to from Hashem, but the weight and the outcome is on Hashem. I'm in the moment making the best choices I can, being kind in the moment, acting as my highest self that I could in the moment, but the outcome, the results, all of that is on Hashem. How things turn out, I have no control over. And surrendering whatever I need to control over any result is up to Hashem. And surrendering that to Hashem is that moment of Hineni. So for me, that Hineni, I'm ready, my Lord, was such a deep and powerful, moving idea. And that's where revelation is, in our deepest struggles, in that moment where we could surrender to what Hashem needs from me and needs to pass through me, and to give over our issues to Hashem. And I always say the story, but the man who was traveling in the horse, or the man was traveling, and someone offered him a ride. He was going a very long way. He had and he goes in the back of his horse and buggy. This is a long time ago. And he turns around and he sees that the man's sitting in the back, but his huge suitcase is on his lap. And he says, "Sir, you can put your suitcase down." He goes, "You're already carrying me, bringing me. I don't want you to have to bring my suitcase as well. So I'm going to hold it." And that's how we all, a lot of times, need to surrender. Where Hashem is looking at us, and Hashem is saying, "What do you mean? It's ridiculous, right? I'm carrying your suitcase anyways. Why are we holding on to it?" We hold on to so much of our stuff, of our baggage, of our worries, that Hashem is saying, "Why don't you put it down?" And we're like, "No, this is too big for you." Hashem is like, "I'm carrying your load anyways. I'm the one holding this load. I'm the one deciding the outcome. I'm the one who's going to take care of everything for you. You can put what you need to put down. What you don't need to carry, you don't need to carry." There's very little most of what we carry is things we don't need to carry. Mm-hmm. Worrying about the outcome of anything is not our business. It's Hashem's business. We have no control over it. So putting that down, surrendering in that Hineni, is for me that message of like the path to Vayera, to feeling Hashem intimately in my heart, in my hearts. I have to link so many things. The video of Jonathan Sachs and Leonard Cohen, and this man talking to the Rebbe, when he's just so emotional, and it's like 70 years later, and when you hear him saying it, you can't, even my husband was tearing up when he saw it. It's just, you can't not cry, feeling that, what we're looking for. 23 minutes. I wasn't even going to go there. Okay, I'll share one more idea also that I never shared before, that I recently read, that was very deep. I think it's also from Jonathan Sachs. Zechona Livracha. What's your question? Sure. Is it about what I just shared now, or something else? So go ahead. And he appeared, but it also means revelation. Vayera Hashem al Avraham, and Hashem appeared to Avraham, but revealed himself to Avraham. Oh, so I was saying that the revelation that we want of Hashem actually talking to us face to face, or feeling Hashem imminently in my heart, in my life, to me, that connection was that happens in this. Oh, so let me go back and summarize. The name of the Parsha is Vayera, about revelation, and we see that the greatest revelation, and to me that message, is that the real revelation imminently with Hashem, in a direct way, is in the Parsha full of nisyonot and the darkest challenges. And the truth is that that's where we find the greatest revelation of Hashem, in the darkest challenges. And for me, the message was, where in those darkest challenges do we see Hashem? When we can say Hineni, and when we can welcome and open ourselves up to Hashem being with us in those moments, in those challenges, carrying us and holding us through those challenges. And it actually says in the end of the 40 years of the desert, when we look back, it literally says that Hashem was carrying us the whole time. There's a pasuk where Moshe Rabbeinu reflects, so that Hashem was holding us like a mother holds his child through the 40 years in the desert. So when we can feel that and surrender and open ourselves up, that's when we have that deep yearning, that revelation that we're learning for, to feel Hashem deep in our heart, the Vayera. That was my take on it. Okay, now something I've never heard, but going back to the idea of the binding of Yitzchak, the Akedat Yitzchak. So Avraham, I have two favorite thoughts on this. I'll see if we get to two or one. There's so many questions and answers, and I'll focus on one that really talked to me this year. So Avraham if we go to Avram's name, because we love the names of something, just the background, it tells us about the essence of it, because neshama is the essence of something, it's the soul, and the core of the word neshama is shame. And that tells us that the name of something is connected to its essence. And this is because the letters of Hashem, the letters of the alphabet, are how Hashem sends and channels his light down. So our energy and our chayus from Hashem comes to us through the letters of our name. And that's why even if someone like me, I use Kiki, not my Hebrew name, we're supposed to use your Hebrew name once a day, at least once, because it strengthens the channel of Hashem's flow of energy through your name. So the name also, there's a whole other class about how Adam Rishon named everything based on looking at the flow of energy, and that's how he depicts its name. But anyways, the name is its essence. And Avraham's name is Av. He's the father. He is the first father. He's the father of Judaism, the father of monotheism, and he is like the depiction of fatherhood. Avram, before he was the great father, a mighty father, and when Hashem changed his name, Rashi brings down that before his name meant great father, and now he's Avraham, he's Av Hamon, he's Av of Hamon nation, a father of many nations, because he fathered two great nations, and then from Judaism came other nations as well. So Avram was chosen to be like the epitomal parental figure, and we learned so much about parenthood from Avram. And one of my other favorite Divrei Torah is, when analyzing the first conversation in the Torah between a father and a son, in the text is Avram and his son Yitzchak on the way to the Akedah. And there's so much to learn about education and parenthood in that. And maybe we'll get to that in a moment. But here we have Avram being the parental role model, but Avram's life seems to be the opposite of that. Avraham sent away his two children. He sent away Yishmael when he was a bad influence, which we clearly, by the way, learned from Rashi is not a message for all parents to send away rebellious children. Rashi clearly says it was a nevuah. There was a specific reason. In that case, Sarah had a nevuah from God that in this case, that was what had to be done, because it was dangerous for him to stay for himself and for Yitzchak because of where it was going. It was going to be dangerous. But in general, that's not, the normal case. And in fact, it caused, and then, so Avram had to send away his son. And then his other son, he has to now slaughter his son. And this is like the father figure that we have to learn from. How could he be a role model for future generations? And really the questions are about Hashem's will, because Avram didn't want to do any of them. Avram loved his son Yitzchak, and Avram loved Yishmael and didn't want to send him away either. He fought Sarah on it. It says it distressed him greatly. So what is the Torah telling us about fatherhood really in depicting Av, the father, as a father who has to send away two of his children? And here is where it gets even cooler. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs points out the connection of the words when Avram summons Avram to Akedah. He says, "Kach na, please take." I don't know if es bincha, your son, es yichidcha, your only son, es sherahavta, the one that you love, es Yitzchak. And this reflects last week in Parshas Lech Lecha, where remember Hashem had a staged command. He said, "Lech Lecha." Go forth, me'artzecha, right, from your land, moladetzecha, from your birthplace, mi beis avicha, from their father's house. Again, 3 times, echoing the same idea. Both times saying everything in gradual stages to be very, very in three terms. And also in that case, we had so we have this like echo of what happened then. And over there, Hashem was instructing Avraham to emancipate from his father. So he was breaking away from his father's home. And now again, Hashem is saying, now that you broke away from that was your first test, to leave your father's home. And now your last test is to separate from your child. So you separated from your father, and now bringing it home in full circle is distancing, the ultimate distancing from your child. It's like horrifying. It's not, what are we supposed to take from this? From the epitomal father to separate from his parents and his child? What do we learn from this? It is really, he says, it's too strange to be accidental. There has to be a mystery here. So in a national way, Jonathan Sacks says something astounding, and I like more the personal idea of it. What he's saying is that in order for Avram to introduce monotheism, really what he's introducing, more than just the belief in one God, he was also introducing a totally new concept, which is the creation of the individual. Until then, everything was, there was family, everything was, no one was an individual, everyone was part of a family unit. So there was no mother, there was just the father figure. He owned his wife and his children. He could sacrifice his child if he wanted because he owned his child. He owned his wife. There was no independent individual. And in order for monotheism, for relationship with Hashem to exist, there had to be that break where every person can have their individuality. Avram was that first person to break away from his father's home. He broke away from his father's ideologies and became his own person, his individuality. And the birth of individuality was like this radical mindset change that Hashem had to put in order for monotheism to create. And so that reflects in, like, you have to, on Avram's first mission, to break away from his father's home in order to be able to show individuality, to have an individual. And the point of that space, that break, is for the for connection that comes afterwards from a place of individuality. And this is really probably one of the biggest struggles as parents. As parents, the hardest thing is to break our child who came, especially as a mom, who grew in our womb, in our body, and to actually cut the later, Jenny cuts sometimes the first umbilical cord, to cut the later umbilical cord, to actually break away where my child is no longer an extension of me. I don't know when it happens because my children are still an extension of me, but at some point it's going to happen where they are their own individual, and to totally be able to break them away from me and say, you don't belong to me, you're your own individual. And only when that break could happen in fatherhood, only then can you be a real father and a real parent that has true love. Because true love, when you have all love, and another theme and the recurring theme in this week's Parsha is balancing chesed with gvura, because Avram epitomizes chesed, and we see constantly throughout this Parsha, through the angels and so many stories, Avram needing to balance gvura with his chesed, and that's what that was last year's class. But so first separate, then connect. That's the Jewish way, and that's how Hashem made the world to begin with. First, it says Hashem separated the domains. First, everything was confused. There was water and land in one orb. The earth was submerged in water in that primal womb. There was light and dark mixed together. Everything was one, was enmeshed. We were all in the womb of Hashem before, and in order for the world to exist, there had to be a total cutting off and the separation. For Hashem distances himself, made a helem where he hid himself to create an olam, and had to separate day and night, separate the waters, separate the earth from the land. And only after everything is separated, then it can be filled with life and with love and that's how we create everything in our lives. Any relationship, first we have to separate, leave space for another person. In order to be married the first time, we need to create space in ourselves, move aside, make space in ourselves, and make space for another person. And that's in parenthood as well. And it's probably the hardest place to make space, because it's so easy to feel like my child is a part of me, because they literally were. And that shift to being able to say, I don't own you, and to give you your own identity, to become an individual, not a part of my family unit. And one of my favorite ideas, I've shared this before, as Manis Friedman once said, when a mother at a talk, when he spoke here in Efrat last year for Chabad, a woman raised her hand. She said, what do I do about my daughter who is not religious? How do I influence her? She's older, living on her own. And Manis Friedman said that it's really fascinating that Hashem has so many children but no grandchildren. And what he was essentially saying is that Hashem only has children. He never gets to have a grandchild, which means that your child's connection to Hashem doesn't go through you. It's not that Hashem is your father, so he's your child's grandfather. Their connection to Hashem is completely separate from you. Chinuch is for you to help them in their early stages, but as soon as they're an adult and they're meant to leave their kind of start to develop not their connection to Hashem through you, they're supposed to hold on to that. We have in davening every day we say in Isaiah Shir, Zeh keli ve'anvehu Elokei avi v'armenus. We have two relationships with Hashem. We have Hashem as the God of our fathers, our heritage. We hold on to that. We mention every day the God of my Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, right? The God of our fathers. But we also have a separate, even more impactful, deep relationship, Hineni relationship with Hashem, which is Elokei Zeh keli. There's my God. And so the good news is, he says, you don't have to worry about your daughter's relationship with Hashem, because that's between her and God. right? You have to worry about it and you're educating her when you're younger. But at that point, when you have to be able to separate, right? Yitzchak's an adult at this point. He's saying that to be a loving father, you have to have gevura. To have true love and chesed, you have to first have total separation, where you surrender your child to Hashem, where you sacrifice in a way, so to speak. Your child does not belong to you. And this actually, I heard another radical teaching from Rabbi Sachs about how could we, when I mentioned earlier, the question was, how can Torah mention child sacrifice when it's the opposite of that? And he says, in order to denounce child sacrifice, because child sacrifices is on the foundation that I own my child. And so Avram first has to surrender Yitzchak and say, and Hashem has to really, throughout Judaism, the premise of Judaism is that we can't litter the world or destroy the world because it's not out. Even if I own a piece of land, it's not mine. It's Hashem, belongs to Hashem. Eretz Yisrael belongs to Hashem. That's the first pasuk that Hashem says, it's my land. I can give it to whoever I want to. I created it and it's mine to give. It's not yours to decide. It's mine to decide who it belongs to. Our bodies, we can't harm our bodies because they don't belong to us either. And so if our own body doesn't belong to us, how much more so the bodies of our children don't belong to us to be able to sacrifice. And Hashem was saying that toward Jonathan Sachs, there was a radical way of saying, your child doesn't belong to you. You have to sacrifice Yitzchak to me to make this radical claim that you don't get to do with your child with what you want. You are, at most, your guardians of Hashem's precious cargo in this world. Hashem picked you to guard and nurture and give your child the proper structure and boundaries and influence them in chinuch when they're young, but to guard them, but you don't own them. And there's a certain place you're going to have to make that switch and have that like emancipation. And that's what the Akedah represented, that like radical change in the thinking and ideology of the world, that we're an individual. I'm not only a product, like last week, of my environment. I'm not a product of, I can't keep blaming the way I grew up. I can't say that I'm just a product of how I grew up and how I was raised. Like so many people here, I know we're not raised in a religious upbringing or even a Jewish upbringing, but you were the Avrahams who were able to say, I'm not a product. I can choose to be different. I can choose to be an individual. And that came from first Avraham completely separating his identity from his father's home. Leave your father's home, leave all of that behind, become your own individual, and then being able to also give that to your child, that your child can also become an individual and know that they are not only your property to do what you want with. And then we can truly love our child. And it's so hard. It's the biggest, probably the most painful, one of the most painful disconnects for a parent, to be able to surrender their child. And I think that's the second Hineni, like surrender, of saying like, yes, I'm here for you, my child. I'm here. I surrender to that you are not. I surrender that I don't own you, and you're your own individual, and you're going to have your own path with Hashem. And if Yitzchak took the opposite path of Avraham was Chesed, and Yitzchak epitomized Gevura. We'll learn about Yitzchak next week and how he was Gevura. So it's a really radical teaching, but to me it was like he says letting go. I'll read you a verse that he said that was so nice. He said in the book called The Greatest I never heard it, by Matthew Syed. Anyone know it? He says he notes how important the encouragement of parents is to the making of champions. It's called On Sporting Heroes. And he says, letting go, that is the essential paradox of parenthood. You care, you nurture, you sacrifice, and then you watch as the little ones fly into the great unknown, often shouting recriminations as they depart. You'll experience the stomach-clenching pain of separation, but you do so with a smile and a hug, aware that the desire to protect and love must never morph into the tyranny of mollycoddling. And he says that in this world, that Hashem is teaching us in this transformative moment of the birth of the individual, that delicate art of making space. Without that space, no individuality can grow. And he ends with the words of the Irish poet, John something Otonu, to bless the space between us. So that space allows for that connection, which is a very novel, radical idea that I take on this Parsha. If we have a minute, it's 38. One last thought. My favorite thought that came to me when I had to give a parenting talk, and I was in seminary 15 years ago, and it was this week's Parsha, and it was a talk on chinuch. And no, I was 18. and this thought has stayed with me since, and I didn't have children then, but now it means more to me. I noticed that this is the first conversation between a father and a child in the Torah. When Avraham, the first words spoken, I brought it for you in the sources, keep forgetting to show you the sources, but they're walking together to the Akedah. Vayomar Yitzchak, these are the first words of a child to their father, and vice versa. Vayomar Yitzchak al Avram Aviv. And Yitzchak says to his father, Avraham, right? Avraham, the father, his father, Avi. And what does he say? Avi, my father. Vayomer Hineni b'ni. And he says, I'm here, my son. What happened there? That was the whole conversation. And then he says, Vayomer, and he says, I see the eitzim, I see the fire, the wood, but where is the sheep? Where is the sheep that you're going to offer? And he says, Hashem will show us. Vayomer la Hashem, and he answered him later, Hashem will show us the offering. And anyways, but the first words are, to me, the essence of what being a parent is, that underneath everything, what our children are asking us all the time, what they're really asking from us is, Avi, where are you? So he's walking with Avram. Avram has so much on his mind, the weight of this, what he's about to do, the fulfilling Hashem's will, everything. And his son senses, to me, that he's not with him. And all he says is, Avi. He doesn't ask a question. He doesn't say, Vayomer hine eish. He first says, Avi, where are you? Father. He says, Father, where are you? I want you. And that's every child turned to every one of us. They don't want our gifts and our trips. What they really want from us in all of that is us. They want us to be with them, to look at them in their eyes, to smile at them, to just be next to them and be joyful to be in their presence and to be present with them, which I shared this before there were smartphones, before I had a smartphone. And it echoes even more. You know that famous joke sad story? The boy asks his father over and over again to show him something, and his father is busy. And he says, Dad, how much you make an hour? As a lawyer, then it was like $150 an hour. Now it's $1,500 an hour, actually. And he says, I make $100 an hour, son. Why? And he says, goes to his room. He comes back and he takes out his piggy bank, $150, says, here's $100. Can I have an hour of your time? And it's heartbreaking, but I think that we can all feel that. We all feel that for a reason. And what does Avram answer? Hineni b'ni. That's all he says. I am here. I'm with you, my son. And that, to me, is like the ultimate message of parenthood. The first message the Torah gives us between a father and a child. Before anything else, our children just want us. We're just there to be with them, to be present with them, with whatever they're going through. If they're going to a sacrifice, if they're going through a good time or a bad time, all they want is just us to sit there. We don't need to say the right thing. We don't need to be the perfect parent. We don't need to be the parent that buys them things. We're not an inadequate parent because we didn't get our kids the nicest things, or because we didn't have the wisest wisdom, or because we weren't perfect, or because we messed up and we scream sometimes. What makes us the perfect parent is just us. A child doesn't want a different father. He doesn't want someone else's father who is going to give them more things. They just want their own mother or father or guardian to be with them. And that's what the answer is. Hineni b'ni, I'm here with you, my son. And that really should reflect and resonate with every one of us as the basis of all chinuch, of the biggest teaching, to basically put our phone down and just give our children what they want, which is our 100% attention. Whenever I learn this, it reminds me that, like, sometimes, wake up in the morning and I'm late and I have to rush my kids out. But like the message sometimes that they see if I'm rushing is like, I want them out, or I'm frustrated to see them. So no matter how stressed I am, I try really hard that when the first thing my child sees when we wake up is that I put on the biggest smile and I say, Svi, good morning. I'm so happy to see you. Come in my bed. Whatever it is that they really feel that genuine love for me. And it's easy to turn on because it's there. But sometimes there's so much to turn on that love that they know that there's nothing I would rather see than their face. And when they come home, even if I'm like right in the middle of work and they came home right then and they're coming in screaming, I'm starving, I'm bored, what do I do? That like, no matter what, that I turn on my biggest smile, I stop everything I'm doing and I look at them and I say, I'm so happy to see you. I missed you so much today. And just to give them that knowing that I want them to be with me, that their presence is loved and desired, that's deeper than anything else and more impactful than anything else I can ever give them. And it's hard, but it's worth it.
Redos?
Yes.
Meaning my kids
Yes,
are 42.
of course. I've shared before that there's a woman who's in her 40s, who's a Chabad shlucha, who shared this at the convention 2 years ago or last year. I think it was last year, that she had a really rough childhood. A mom who grew up also from like Holocaust survivors who would like, and when she was upset at her daughter, just wouldn't talk to her for days at a time. And so you would think she can't fix the damage she did. This girl was like traumatized, right? Her mother on her birthday once didn't talk to her for like a week. And this mother, I know this mom, she's like a well-known, amazing person who also lectures. You wouldn't know. She also went through stuff as a child. And she said one time her mom said to her, I think I mentioned this, if I knew then what I knew now, I would have done things so differently. And she said that was like 10 years of healing therapy for her, just to hear her mom go back and say, I wish I had done things differently. If I knew then, I wish I would never have done that. And she said that was like going to healing as 10 years. So of course, healing is so powerful. Repairing is so powerful. If we could tell our child, I wish I hugged you more when you were little, but come, it's not too late. I want to hug you more. I want to hug you now. I want to hear about your day. It's never too late. And even to be able to go back and say, maybe as a child, to be able to go back to a child, if any of you sitting here could know that if our parents came to us any point and said to us, you know, when you were a child and I did this and this, I know it really hurt you and I'm really sorry, or I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish I could go back and do things differently. How healing would that be for our soul to hear that and to like repair that? And even if our parents are not with us, we can still do that for ourselves. And that's what she was sharing at this talk, that we don't necessarily need the parent to affirm or to apologize or to repair that, because sometimes the parent's not capable of it. They don't have that capacity to do that, or they're not even here to do that anymore. But we need someone to see it, to witness. We need that healing inside of us, that child inside of us needs someone to witness that pain that we had as a child and we didn't get what we wanted. And no parent is perfect, and no child got everything that they needed. No, there is no child in the world who got every single emotional need met at every moment, because it's not possible. Because we want more than our parents are capable of giving. But if we can go back and witness that child, do it ourselves, or ask Hashem to witness, or ask someone that we love, someone to listen and to hold witness and to see that child in me that was so sad, that didn't get that emotional need that they needed met. Their parent wasn't there for them. Their parent wasn't able to give them what they needed. If someone could witness that, obviously if it's the parent, that's amazing. But if the parent can't, if we could say, Hashem, you witnessed that and you saw that pain and you know what I went through, or I witnessed that pain and I know that that child needed more and I wish that that child had gotten what they needed. Or if someone else can say, I witness you, see what you went through, and wish that you got that, and I'm sure, you know, your mom would have done things differently if she had known or was able to, or if someone could witness that, that's also extremely healing and has very powerful healing effects, to be able to go back there and see that and have Hashem as our witness. So we went really off today, but off what I was planning to teach. But I love when I could surrender before a class. When I'm least prepared, I say, Hashem sfatai tiftach figi tlasecha. Hashem, open my lips and say through me whatever you think needs to be said. And those are usually my better classes than my most prepared classes. Thank you so much for joining. I can't wait to see you next week. If you appreciate this, feel free to share it with your friends and sponsor a shir in honor of a loved one.
So I don't know if it's a midrash or what, but my husband said that